Yeah, see the comment bars up there? Good.
Okay. And we're live. What's up, guys?
Howdy do.
Sorry, I just started streaming to LinkedIn, and dude, this is the worst start ever. Okay. What's up, Kingdom of Rock? This is Matt Gibson, and I just had technical difficulties and a brain fart all at the same time. But we are here today with my co-host Michael Melinda in San Francisco. What's going on, Mike?
It's a groovy day. It's a groovy day.
Dude, where's the weather window? How am I supposed to tell the weather there?
The windows, we have fires, so it smells crappy if you live in certain areas of the peninsula. There are possible evacuation notices going out to people living in the Santa Cruz Mountains and stuff like that. So it's a little bit crappy in the North Bay at the moment. But we're keeping our fingers crossed that everybody ends up okay. The fires go bye-bye and life continues anew. But once again, it's 2020. Anything can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are here. Speaking of anything can happen, we've got an awesome guest here today. We've got Randy Monroe, Rockin Randy, as some people call him, and he is the lead singer of Hot for Teacher, which is a Van Halen tribute band. He plays the lead singer, David Lee Roth, obviously, and kind of favor him a little bit.
Little Sammy Hagar too.
Little Sammy. Okay, you do both eras.
That's
right.
He has to fly between all of them.
Nice, dude. So, okay, do you ever do the split and like the Sammy Hagar guitar thing at the same time?
Yeah, right. I can do kicks a little better. Now I can get my kicks up to about, top of my head still, but I can't do that. I'm a grandpa now. Hot for Teacher's been going. This is the 21st year starting this month. 21 years of doing it. I didn't start the tribute thing until about the mid-30s when I'd had enough of working on original stuff. And it just was a nice way of paying the bills and having a good time.
Yeah, well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And
Mike, actually, I wanted to thank Mike for reaching out to Randy. You guys have known each other for a little while.
Yeah, a little bit.
I've had the good fortune of having a number of editors from Guitar Player Magazine work through Hot for Teacher. So that's been a wonderful experience. I don't know why these world-class renowned musicians want to play in this tribute band, but hey, I don't ask. I just I'm grateful.
You have to be pretty shitty to cover Eddie Van Halen, so it's no wonder you've been deluged with. But there's been some great sorts. Most recently that I know, of course, Jude Gold, who's now in Jefferson Starship. Another crazy, awesome guitar player.
Yeah, Jude is sickness beyond sick, hella sick, as we say in the Bay Area, hella sick, and just the sweetest, nicest guy in the world too. Still my brother, always will.
Yeah, he is that as well. And I know, having been his boss for so long, that guy, he's one of those guys you want to go, dude, why aren't you the richest guitar player in the world? Because I don't think there's anything in the world you can't play.
He is unbelievably amazing. When we did the Not Dead Yet show for our friend Jason Becker, the first one, we were, by the way, one of my greatest compliments was from Gary Becker, Jason's dad. Was entrusted to me Jason's special guitar. And let me tell you how worried I was about that, having that behind my seat in my car, moving it from place to place. And then when I was bringing it back after the show, he said, Randy, your band was the only band that had the balls to play one of my son's songs. We did at Showtime that he recorded with David Lee Roth, and the one of those that Jason wrote. And before we started the song, Jude got up there and he talked about with the crowd, let me tell you what you're going to see and what you're going to hear here. And he did it at halftime. He did the solo at halftime before we did the song, so people would really understand the beauty of what that solo was about. And that was an amazing moment unto itself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, guys like Jude killed my dream to be the world's greatest guitar player. I'm just like, man, I'm not going to catch that guy.
Well, when I asked him about, our original guitar player, Terry Lauderdale, had left the band suddenly, and we had a NAMM show, the first NAMM show that we had coming up, and I asked Jude if he could fill in, and he said, "Yeah, I want the gig." And I said, "That's great, thank you so much. It'll probably be just a couple of gigs, and we'll find someone." He goes, "Randy, I want the gig." And I said, "Super, thank you so much. You're going to fill in a couple." He goes, "Randy, I'm trying to tell you, I want the gig." And I'm going, "Jude, you're an editor of Guitar Player magazine. You got all this stuff. You just toured with B times 3 with Billy Sheehan, Stu Hamm, and Jeff Berlin. For Alan Holsworth right there. I mean, 3 of the greatest bass players ever on this planet. And with John Mader on drums, too, by the way, one of the greatest percussion guys on this planet at Hamilton. And all his repertoire is miles long. And I'm like, he wanted the gig. So while he was with us, it was about a couple years in, he got the phone call from MI and asked to be director of GIT, the Guitar Institute of Technology in Hollywood. And I'm like, bro, you got to take that. I mean, you got to do that. So for more than half the time, we were flying him back and forth from Southern Cal to Northern Cal while we were doing this. And then you know how things get after a number of years and doing that a lot, it tends to, it just became a little much one way or the other.
Yeah, I bet he's kind of wishing for those days now, because it's just like all of us, he's just sitting at home waiting for something cool.
Well, I might be giving Jefferson Starship a show here at some point when we get into the nitty gritty of some of the things that I've been doing this summer. So I've also had Matt Blackett in the band. He wasn't for teacher. We did the Red Rocker experience with Matt for a good year and a half or so. Slims, great packed crowd, super show there. Rest in peace, Slims. That's Bob Skaggs Club in San Francisco. That's going to be turned into a DJ venue. Boo. Yeah. I've just seen the real musicians get pushed to the wayside for pre-recorded music and someone putting on their own records at home and playing them for a lot of people. But whatever, that's what life is.
Well, hey, if you need a fake Sammy Hagar or doppelganger, I've got asked if I was Sammy Hagar twice at NAMM this year.
Nice. So. For 10 years, we were the first tribute at NAMM, and some people go to the party, and I was the party. And that was at the Hilton every year. And then about 2 years ago, they said, we want to go all acoustic. And I'm thinking, whoa, I wonder what kind of feedback you're going to get. And they got a lot of feedback going, where's the Van Halen band? And lo and behold, that it just didn't transpire anymore. And that's okay. We had a great run with it,
Yeah.
And then we might have one of your other cohorts here coming in the band who's written for both bass player and guitar player. But,
Can you mention the name? Who was that?
His name is Jimmy, and his last name is Leslie.
Oh, Jimmy. Oh, what's he going to do for you?
Mike Anthony. He's built right for it. Yeah. He's got those beautiful high tenor tones. We need the voice too. So yeah. You don't know what the future holds. I get gifts all the time from the universe.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, given that music journalism, if you're an under editor, I got no complaints about what I was paid, but under editors don't get paid a lot. So I want to thank you, Randy, for keeping my kids gainfully employed throughout the year. We appreciate that.
We're trying to keep more people employed, actually. That's the whole reason we started working this summer.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on with you, Randy, as far as I know the drive-in concerts and everything. What's the story behind that?
Well, I got a phone call from my friend Alex Moran, who runs Spider Ranch Productions in must have been early May, maybe it was late April, and he said, I really want to get my crew out working. He was on tour with DaBaby in Detroit when everything shut down in mid-March. And we were trying to find a location, and we were going to go to Cal Expo at first, and they kind of pulled the rug out from under us, if you will. Mm-hmm. Our connections and part of the team that put it together had connections at Alameda County Fairgrounds as well. One of the partners is funding the new 7,000 seat arena there. And so we were able to open this up in the most stringent county in California health wise, and make it work really well. Not we weren't just the ones happy. The audience, most important, was happy, but the police that were there were happy. Everyone was happy.
And then when was that, and what were the bands on that initial?
The bands on that initial, everything we've done has been tribute oriented. All of the bigger nationals, we don't have a lot of money starting this up, even though we have a beautiful production, a $1.5 million stage production with 3 HD cameras, mixing it down for the audience on 2 giant LCD screens on either side of the stage. The live stage, the beautiful sound, crystal clear sound, keeping it under 100 dB, running at about 92 to 95 dB, so the surrounding neighborhoods aren't too affected. Everyone in the back can hear. We also simulcast it for people on the radios in 3 different areas. The problem lied in that we only can have 200 vehicles in there, and 204 people in a car, that's 800 people. It's really hard to make money that way, and so the bands aren't getting paid a lot, and therefore I brought in the tributes that seemed to be itching a little bit. So of course, Hot for Teacher was the one tapped initially, and then I started calling some of my friends, and I have my friends that are in an awesome ZZ Top tribute called Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers. Tim Narducci, Chris Lombard, known as Cornbread, and Carter on drums. And they came on board. And then I called some friends from the Valley that have a Journey band. My friend Frank House's band. They're called Journey Revisited. And so the first show, we were a few cars shy of a sellout, but the second show sold out. I believe the first show being a little shy was probably because it was the first time we cracked the ice in California. And that was on June 12th, Friday, June 12th.
And it was this was, I don't know if we mentioned, but this was at the Pleasanton Fairgrounds.
Pleasanton Fairground, Alameda County Fairgrounds in Pleasanton, California. Yeah. And all of the bands, the way we lined it up, were 2-night stints, Friday and Saturday. So we did Friday night and Saturday night. And then a couple of weeks later, we brought in some more bands that packed it in and sold it out. A band called Fleetwood Mask that Mick Fleetwood knows and endorses. That's a pretty good thing, It's kind of like Mike Anthony sitting in with me, or Billy Sheehan sitting in with me. Other than David Lee Roth, I don't know too many people that can say that. So, and we did a country weekend that didn't do as well as we expected. We didn't have anybody from Nashville in, obviously. I don't want to put people on planes, on those tubes in the air, but and maybe that was part of the reason. I feel, from what I've heard a little bit, there's a little fickleness in the country scene in the Bay Area. Even though so many people support it, people were asking for it, but yet the audience just didn't show up the right way we'd expected. So
does the audience interact about the way you'd expect in their cars? I mean, what are some of the changes you've noticed as far as audience feedback, both as a performer and as the promoter?
Well, the first show, everyone stayed. A lot of people stayed in their vehicle. A few people got out, but that was it. On the first show, though, we learned a valuable lesson. When we busted into And the Cradle Will Rock, like 30 women rushed the stage, all from different cars. And that kind of freaked everyone out. Of course, me, thinking instant into what I do, I jump off the stage and start dancing and doing all that stuff with them. But got them back. I ran up on stage, and we made sure to not have that happen again. We actually put a little bit of a barricade up in front of the stage to prevent that. People, after that show, started getting out of their cars. Basically, you have a car spot, and then you have a blank spot on both sides of the car. Driveway, which is like blank spot in front and back of car, too. So you have this huge area, this bubble that you have, if you will. And if you're in your bubble, you're okay. It's outdoors. There's usually breezes and stuff. But, most people's most people were wearing masks most of the time. There were a few that, would sit out the car. They're still with their bubble of friends and family, if you will. And that's okay, as long as if you move from there, and you can come close to the stage and watch or go to the bathroom, but you have to be wearing your mask. Yeah. So, and people were very compliant on it. We didn't have any problems.
Well, Johnny A, who's been on our show, he did a kind of a drive-in show for a club in, I think, where he lives up in New Hampshire or something like that, or around that. And they basically, when you bought your car ticket, you got the parking lot, the parking space and the parking space next to you. So you could put in a lounge or whatever and hang out or stay in the car. So I think these are awesome ways to keep safe and keep the bubble open.
Well, what we have is the people will be in their car. Let me get my hand up so I can see it in the camera. And they would sit right in front of their vehicle if they tailgated and backed in with their truck bed, or they would park their car and leave some room, because you've got a spot on both sides of you that's the same size as your vehicle spot. But if you're in the middle there and they're in the middle there, then now you're both in the same spot, if you follow what I'm saying. So that's not kosher dill, as they might say in the Midwest. So you got to stay in your vehicle spot somehow, right? And people were really good. We had one incident on the last show that we did last weekend on Saturday night. Unfortunately, a couple of Pleasanton's finest had to remedy that. But when we talk with them, they're like, "Are you kidding, you guys? This is not your fault. Stuff like this happens. It shows someone gets stupidly drunk, and you've had no problem for all these shows. So don't even know what's happened here. We'll take care of it."
Randy, do you hire your own security for these things to make sure everything's okay, or do the cops typically, Pleasanton cops typically?
Pleasanton PD. Okay. And now we're moving. We had another couple of shows this weekend. Our production team was going to do Sublime Friday night, and an EDM show on Saturday in the other lot. And because of the fires, we had 11,000 fire strikes from the thunderstorms, which was for me as a science teacher, earth science. Oh, what a blessing that was on Sunday to wake up to these boomers in the late morning, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and then rain, needed rain. But unfortunately, of those 11,000 lightning strikes, 300 of them created fires here. So usually we're in fire season around October, and it's now, mid-August, late August, mid-ish, and we're dealing with all the smoke from that. So that, coming back to what you said earlier, Michael, about that. Luckily, where I'm at in the Concord-Clayton area, Clayton Highlands, we've had 4 fires, the lightning complex fires here off the east side of Mount Diablo, and they have those pretty well contained. But it's the other ones a little further north in Sonoma County, over in Solano County, Vacaville, a little further south down near Santa Clara. There's one right at Point Reyes that's threatening Bolinas last night. My home away from home, I wrote a song that's got a lot of radio play. One of my original things I did with Terry Lauderdale in the 90s, Bolinas. Yeah.
Well, so the Sublime concert and the EDM concert were canceled because of the fire, right?
Yeah, the smoke in the air. We have a spare the air alert all the way through the weekend, which just turns into 4-5 days straight of it, and then issuing it earlier this morning, a 4-day spare the air day. That's pretty unprecedented around here. Usually we get some nice winds from the coast to blow things away, and that's just not happening with this big heat dome here. And that has to do with the change to the climate, thanks to all the stuff we keep putting up there.
Dude, I just moved to Southern California last September, and from Virginia. And
I grew up in Maryland.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it's like all my childhood dreams, I'm out here, I'm releasing my first record, I'm, growing the show, I'm making all these connections and doing all this. But like California is like hell in a handbasket, dude, since I've been here. It's just like everything just is like, oh.
Well, the COVID thing really messed things up. And unfortunately, pandemics need strong leadership, and that's something that hasn't happened. And we're called the United States for a reason, because we're all connected. And I think we've been looking at things more isolated, kind of almost with a nationalistic kind of viewpoint, sadly. And that's why we're still in a pandemic now. When you look at most of the other countries, actually all of them around the world, they're able to open up school, which is what I do. And, if we had the PPE and we had, everyone wore a mask, we could knock these numbers down. It's basic science sense. Facts do matter.
Well, it's definitely put a hurting on the music industry for sure. And, I think it's cool that you guys are trying to come up with creative ways to get people to live events. And, bands are really struggling, because live music obviously was their last source of substantial income that they've had. And
it's hard to make money from any kind of BMI or ASCAP these days, since everything's streaming. What is it, like 43 thousandths of a penny you get for every listen? Are you kidding me? How do you make money? How do you do that? The whole model got broken years ago with CDs, and Napster, I think, was one of those that started it, right? And this whole idea of making money, you used to make money on your product and go out and tour to support your product. And now you can't make money on your product because if some person gets it and uploads it, it's free to the world. And so everyone has to make their money touring. And there's an old proverb from Everybody Loves Raymond that they would say AIS, ass in seat, right? And so it's all about packing more asses in seat, like the way the airlines do it now. If you flew in the 1970s, if you're old like me, compared to flying nowadays, there's a vast difference in the comfort level of being in one of those cabins at coach level, right? Coach is like first class.
Oh yeah, in the 70s, I used to fly back and forth to Germany, and I would have like the whole, my whole cabin would be, just me and a couple of flight attendants. I could sit. I had 100 seats to choose from. It was crazy.
That's great. Yeah, I remember the old school days.
But getting back to the concert thing, because I think that if drive-in concerts are the way to go, from a performer standpoint, how different is it when you're having to engage a crowd that's in a car and not in front of the stage, or not? I mean, is it difficult to see enthusiasm and things like that? Have you had to learn new skills to be able to play to a car windshield?
Have them honk if they're horny.
Okay. So that's basically the.
It's from playing so many clubs and doing this a long time. Sometimes you do shows where there's only a handful of people. All you do is you take that one person and you just imagine them exponentially, right? So you keep that in your head. After we did the first show, by the way, when we did it, everyone was flat foot. And that's why I love showing up to these shows on Friday nights to see all these bands that I bring in. Some from Southern Cal, the recent one, the Petty Fever Band, Tom Petty tribute from Portland, Oregon. My friend Frank from NAMM, who also Nady used to endorse. Nady was a big endorser of us. That's how we got our foot in NAMM. God rest Nady's soul. John's still alive, but the company has been sold off and basically shelved by a photography company about a year and a half ago.
Well, I think, I've looked at some, I'm sure you have, we all have, because, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. And some of the streaming shows and clubs around the Bay Area, it's interesting because if we play a performance at even a small club, we have the acoustic energy and the electronic energy. So there's a PA, that's the electronic energy. The acoustic energy is out in the club bouncing off the walls. If you have a not so hot mixing person, then it kind of, you're still safe because the acoustic energy in the club kind of makes things exciting. But I've noticed on some of these streaming concerts, if you have a mixer who's not putting a little bit of ambience in there, they're mixing too flat, if the monitors aren't awesome and you can't hear yourself sing or play, there's a lot of, moments of terror.
Yeah.
And presentation to the audience too. It's like you kind of go, is the audience going to get burned out on these because they're going, that kind of sucked in a certain way.
Well, when we did our first show, even though we were a little flat foot coming in, I mean, the last show we'd done was February 1st before we did the one in June. We didn't rehearse or do anything. We just came in there and did the show. And, it wasn't perfect, but luckily the sound company and my partner, my friend Alex Moran and his whole crew, these guys were touring with DaBaby, who's one of the biggest stars pop stars in the world right now. They had scheduled to do 30 arena shows, Coachella, South by Southwest, Outside Lands, and all that. Poof, fell apart. So we did that. We did those that weekend, and we realized we need a rehearsal here. So we also had a streaming event come up with my home club where we play a lot called Retro Junkie in Walnut Creek. My friend Enrique runs that. And so in order to make sure we were ready for this streaming thing, we thought we better get in and rehearse. And I'm glad we did. And then we did the streaming thing. And it was interesting being in the club and spread out. It's a small stage in the club. So I wasn't on the stage. Only the drummer was on the stage. In the back on the floor, the dance floor, near the drums were the guitar and the bass. And then I was further up front and the cameras and shooting. But I think this was the second or third time they've done it. And Jeff Fogarty, who's his uncle is John Fogarty. I think his dad was Tom, or is it the other brother? I always forget that.
His dad was Tom.
Fogarty protege.
Yeah.
He got the sound dialed in pretty well. I mean, if you listen to it on your phone, you're not getting it. But if you got headphones on, it came off really nice. And for me, it was just using that camera and imagine it being 1,000 people in front of me and just behaving like that with that camera. And we've had about 12,000 hits so far from that. So that did pretty well. And then we ended up doing this another round of shows at the Drive-In Theater just a couple of weeks ago. That went off great.
Mm-hmm. What was the trigger, or lack of a better word, we use trigger, that started the process of like, I'm going to do this? Like what set that off where you're like, you know what, I'm going to be the guy that makes this happen. I'm going to push this.
Well, I got offered the opportunity to do something. And so if I get the opportunity and I get the motion, the forces start pushing, I help push those boulders up the hill if I can. And so we got that first show underfoot. And, you know, I thought, you know, that's what Alex needed, you know, and he goes, Randy, I want you to book some more bands. Randy, I want you to book some more bands. You're doing a great job. All these shows are selling out. Yeah, keep booking. And I thought, you know what? I'm not doing anything else this summer. We were off from teaching, you know, for the summer. And I thought, why not put on that hat? And so there you go.
Dude, we should do a Kingdom of Rock show guest festival. That would be cool. Just get like everybody that's been on the show and invite them to come out and do like a, you know, I wonder how is that? So it's limited to 200. So I'm thinking, right. How do you scale it?
More than 200, and we could probably get it, you know, like 215. But we're moving. We've got another venue opening up. It's the Bradley Ranch Winery out in Elk Grove, which is just about, you know, just a handful of miles south of South Sacramento. It's a winery ranch, and it's a huge space. And we've got we're opening that up on Labor Day weekend. We got a fantastic show with 6 tribute bands over the 3 nights, 2 bands each night. We got the local best of the schools of rock opening the shows. So we've got the kids opening the shows, you know, kind of trying to pass the
yeah, that's cool.
Kids, you know, give them
the company School of Rock.
Yeah, so there's Oak Grove, coincidentally, Oak Grove, California is the world leader in the School of Rock as far as attendance and participation and enrollment.
Okay. That's
and
cool.
so there's 2 of the nights are from Elk Grove, and 1 of the nights is from the School of Rock in Roseville that are supporting the shows.
Yeah, I remember when those guys started that company.
I can send you a flyer link if you want to check that out too.
Yeah, we'll put it out on the social medias too. Well, if you give us some advertising, we'll put it out for you.
Hold, right now we're planning 300 cars there, but we can hold 400. So I'm hoping to get the sales up. They've been kind of light right now, and it's never really had rock shows. They've done a couple of School of Rock events there that have done pretty well. I mean, it's out in the sticks a little bit, but it's, you know, you're only 15 minutes away from downtown Sacramento. So it's not that far away. Or Rancho Cordova, 10 minutes away. So it's pretty close.
What do you feel the pressures on promoters are? Because like you said, this is a masterful production. It's an expensive production. Not everybody is, you know, has a production team that worked for DaBaby and is, you know, able to put this together.
Right.
Even if people like, our buddy Jim, who runs, a rental firm in the North Bay.
You mean prime time, Jim Douglas, Jimmy?
Douglas, he's got
all that backline just sitting there in the warehouse.
Yeah, it's true, but someone like that, I don't know what his plans are or aren't, but I'm just saying in general, someone like that, they might be a little bit nervous about putting the team together, the technicians, getting the stuff out, the gear out there. How long do you think it takes to actually earn enough of a profit where other promoters will say, okay, I'm in now?
I think that you have to build something. So you have to start somewhere. I think that you have to have the wherewithal and some pockets where it's not going to happen the first time, likely. It might be a building process, and you have to have the patience, again, the pockets to deal with that issue. I think that I'm surprised more people aren't doing it, other than the difficulties of jumping through the hoops for health code permits, fire marshal permits, all the bureaucracy that allow these things to work. People have no idea when they see a band. They don't have much of an idea to know how many hundreds and sometimes thousands of people are behind the scene to make that work. Mm-hmm. And so you have to have the buy-in from everyone on production. They know they're not getting paid probably what they're up to originally. The way that we got the bands to do this, we pay the bands nominally. We figure price per member, $250 or $300 a guy or a lady in the band. And I know that's not normal. Some of these bands get $5, $6, $8 for a show. But if you come out making, $500 or $600 for the weekend, a plane and something you miss, and what you do get is we have a production team that mixes this 3 HD TV camera video. It's the highest res stuff you can get. They don't make anything higher res unless it's 3D something, whatever. But there's nothing really higher res. After our first show, I noticed that I couldn't access that because I don't do video work for a living. You have to have someone with the software. So we added an MP4 player that also records the show. So the bands get the high res mixed video. Also, we have a split board on the front of the house that sends its own mix feed to that audio, to that video. So the bands get a mixed package right there. But that's not all. If you order before midnight tonight, you get a 24 multi-track. 24 multi-track of all of your tracks of the show. You can take that and go back into the studio or play at your home with Pro Tools and mix your own audio. And so you can align that up and do what you need to do with your smoke and mirrors and magic. And you've got a full-scale show production right there. This is like a $5,000 production that you get just for free, right? Yeah. Just for doing that. So that's the caveat. That's the carrot that is getting these bands going, whoa, you know what? Even if I didn't make a dime, that production alone, what that can do when things come back, which I think is going to be 2022, maybe longer if we don't figure out a vaccine, if we don't start to track people and trace them by having enough testing. I got tested with COVID testing in July, and it took them 2 weeks to get my results back. It's no good in 2 weeks. You need it in 3 days at most. 2 weeks was ridiculous. So we're still a long way away, America.
Yeah. Well, my wife has got Hashimoto's disease, which is an immune deficiency. She was able to pay for her own test, and it was the 15-minute result test. But she had to jump through hoops, kind of like you guys had to do with all the health and security clearances for the show. She had to kind of do the same thing just to get the test. So, and of course, you want to think, not to get into this, but you want to think that, everybody should be able to get this, and everybody should be able to get the results right away, and it shouldn't be a hassle. You shouldn't have to meet with a doctor and blah 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 virtually. It was really tough.
We would not be doing these socially distant shows if we had enough PPE and enough testing. So we do need to get into it, because that's the whole reason we're in the place we're in right now. If we can get that part figured out, maybe we can start acting like most of the rest of the world.
Well, you said, and I mean, you're kind of in this now, and you also, kind of partner with people who are in this who know more than Matt and I know, or most of the musicians in the Kingdom of Rock, I'm sure, know.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the inside. If you say 2022, I mean, is that? We're probably going to have a wholesale. Well, I'm kind of.
We're going to lose all the independent venues in America if the government doesn't step in and help. That's happening right now. That's
Sure.
a fact.
Do you think it's going to be a recase?
I've got to be blunt on it, because there's no sugarcoating this stuff.
Yeah. Well, even Retro Junkie that
we don't have school kids in the classroom. This is what I do for a living. We're not going to have kids in the classroom this whole school year, because we can't contact trace, because we can't test enough. We can't even supply our essential workers with enough PPE. Still, months into this, this is a huge problem. America, let your Congress people know it.
Well, do you think that, as far as the effect on all the independent venues, do you think that, what's your take on, you think corporate's going to come in and just buy up everything? Or
that's the way they do everything. Think about it. I mean, that's the rule. It's all cannibalistic. And then you have these giant mega corporations, and we got so many people that have lost their jobs without a dime, and they've cut out that extra $600 a month to try to help these people in some way. We have these major corporations give me the handout, and all these tens of millions of dollars that have gone to them, rather than these small mom and pop places that have allowed all of this to go. And these mom and pop places are so important, because this is where new talent comes from. They get the chance and the platform and the space to be able to hone their crafts, to be well enough to grow into that national thing, that next craze that people want to hear. And without that, you're not going to hear that.
And let's face it, even before COVID, where we live, Randy, North Bay, there was only a few clubs where you could be crappy at, Hotel Utah, that type of thing. A lot of the clubs had already transitioned into a situation where you had to have a draw, or you had to, tickets or whatever, which, a lot of beginning bands can't manage. So this is kind of the worst case scenario, where baby bands were already struggling to find venues to get their act together, as you mentioned.
SaveYourStages.com.
A lot of older musicians.
Sorry.
I talked over you. Sorry, what?
I'm sorry. Save Our Stages.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's the thing where if you want to, some older musicians go, it bums me out that everybody's a YouTube band these days. But if we don't have the clubs, and you need to play music, and you have to play music, you're gonna play it on YouTube. If there's no club there, and are you going to be as awesome as the people that we took lessons from because we were watching people right in front of us put it out there in the world? Yeah, I don't know. Possibly you're going to have a little bit of a deficit there, but if Clear Channel or somebody like that comes in and buys these small clubs, you're not going to let baby bands.
Cumulus,
those
Clear Channel. We only have 3 or 4 major media markets left. This has already happened to radio. I've watched a lot of my friends in radio get moved along, right? For all of this consolidation. I watched my friend here, Mike Melinda, and I watched what happened when the people over in the UK purchased Guitar Player and what happened there. I've witnessed all of this attrition firsthand.
Well, it's sad because it's money, as you've seen with Guitar Player, and I've got no beef with those guys. But you're right; it was a money play. They're reusing a lot of content from the British magazines they already own, so it's cheaper for content, it's cheaper for distribution, and then a magazine that I spent 20 plus years developing struggles because of that, because you don't want people don't want real people being editors. And it's the same thing with the clubs too, and radio. It's cheaper to do this, cheaper to do that. And at some point, the profit margin, outweighs the humanity of it, and
That's the problem with the world right now is why the corporations do not have any moral obligation other than the shareholders. And I was thinking this the other day. I hike all the time. I haven't been able to this week because I'm teaching. I went one day this week. I usually hike 5 days a week, quick 4K hike up and down a hill. And my last hike, I was thinking, somebody needs to write something into a law somehow that there needs to be some sort of moral responsibility in terms of these corporate entities. It's fine to make money and do things, but they need to do more with that. They also need to have some sort of what we might call a conscience. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of one in many ways. And it's not just the music industry that's suffering. It's almost every industry that's suffering. You can look at the mass consolidation of this throughout the middle part of America, not on the edges, but you go into the middle part of America, the only store there is a Walmart, right? And a McDonald's. That's their idea of food, fast food.
Well, and there may be a problem where, in the Reagan era with punk, which I know, a lot of small clubs, you couldn't get into big clubs because they wouldn't book you, whether it was England, London, or San Francisco. But real estate and leasing was low enough to where you could find a crappy bar somewhere, lease it, you rent it, you can make it happen. Post-COVID, I don't know whether you're going to be able to open a new coffee shop, much less say, screw corporate America, I'm going to start my own thing and with my own community. You're not going to be able to afford to open anything in San Francisco.
I see a lot of real estate around this area getting bought up, right? So every time something closes, somebody's purchasing that real estate to either redevelop it, to change it. There's something else going on. And it's not somebody that wants to move in here and start an idea, a small idea on their own. I think a lot of the money is coming from this big money. And this thing is just engulfing so fast, everything. I just worry what's going to be left, Well,
one thing I like about what you're doing, Randy, is you're kind of taking the bull by the horns and you're saying, look, this happened and this is not good, but this is what I'm going to do. And I think that's really the spirit that we need to have to communicate to other artists, like you don't have to be a victim in this COVID crisis. Like things are changing and we can point fingers and say who should have done this and who should have done that. But the fact is the only person that can fix your own life is yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's like, even if somebody hurt you or did something bad or irresponsible and made a mess and it's now you got to clean it up. Well, the sooner you can get over that and just get your freaking mop in your hand. And
that all the time. Get a little mess, teachers cleaning it up.
Yeah.
I'm not your mommy, get over here. But if I don't catch them and they've already left, guess who's cleaning it up, right?
Yeah. So
there is business realities though, and to Matt's point, it's kind of interesting to see these neighborhood concerts where people are just kind of setting up in their driveways or on their porches and playing, and it's mostly just for love of music and to kind of do something nice for the neighborhood. I still think it's going to be tough, because you are still looking for profitability as you go through, the awesome thing that you've done. Not everybody's going to be able to have the deep pockets to wait. I'm not sure who's going to open up clubs. So does the live thing become people playing in driveways, their own driveways, or, just having guerrilla? I mean, I would love to have a little guerrilla concerts where people just take over Golden Gate Park and, play.
Hold on, Michael. There's a problem with that, though. Here's the deal with what I've done. I put on my science hat, right? It's got to be done right and responsibly. So the social distancing, we are industry leading best practices, socially distant, mask wearing entities that are doing this, following the science and health codes. Whatever we do not want things that don't follow that. Otherwise, we're going to stay here into 2022, into 2023, if you follow what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. People need to be smart about what's happening here and how to mitigate these issues. So however a model were to look, I understand the enthusiasm of people wanting to do that, and I totally understand music. I would die without music, right? As all of us here, this is why we're here. This is why we keep doing what we do. We love music. We love all aspects of it. A few things we could get rid of and this and that, but for the most part. But I think it's really important to remember that music, no music, whatever our choices are, we should be thinking about the other person as well as ourselves, but mostly the other person. This is why you wear a mask when you go out. You don't want to infect somebody else. And we have a lot of people right now, unfortunately, it's become politicized, that aren't listening to the facts of things that are holding and impeding the process. So I hope that at some point we all come together and be a United States.
Yeah, that would be very awesome. And then there's also this thing where, I won't mention any names, but Sturgis.
Yeah.
Okay? A lot of bands took the money to play. A lot of bands opted not to promote that they were playing, but still took the money. And I think sometimes, the band, as musicians, as you just mentioned, we have to take responsibility. I mean, I don't walk in anyone else's shoes. So if you're about to lose your house and you had to take that gig to keep, your house bye-bye, I totally am sensitive to that. It's weird not to want to publicize it because, you kind of want your cake and eat it too. It's like, I want the money, but I'm going to pretend I wasn't there. It's a weird time right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be that person that gets photographed not social distancing doing their job, and it's kind of like, there's a lot of people, everybody's upset and stressed out, and nobody really knows the truth for sure. Like, we know that, like, in the sense of like nobody, there's no information out there that is not untainted by somebody's political agenda. And it's very difficult to find good sources of information that is not, somebody trying to win this next presidential election, whoever it is, or somebody that's trying to not get lynched in their state from, because everyone's mad at them, or whatever it is, there's been people showing up to governors' houses and, crazy. It's crazy times. And there's so much fear. There's so much uncertainty, and it's like, I guess, to me, with Kingdom of Rock, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to keep building the community and we have meetups and show guests get together and community meetups and stuff. Yeah. And it's all just, we've had a couple of businesses come out of them. We've had partnerships, all kinds of stuff. And I think as artists, we're all kind of in the same boat, and we can all help each other out, and we can all make our own things. And we don't need to depend on corporate to save us. We don't need Guitar Center. Nothing personal, but that Guitar Center is like my figurehead for corporate music.
Well, that one gobbled up so many
music stores,
pop stores, right?
Yeah.
I watched that happen over 25, 30 years easily, just all of these wonderful stores. I lived in Tucson, Arizona before I came to California, and there was a place called the Chicago store in Tucson. It was super famous all over the country as a music store. It was like a 3-level music store, a huge warehouse thing of all these instruments, and being young and hungry, and you can go in there and pick up anything and start playing it. And those things have kind of disappeared.
Yeah, but there are smart mom and pop shops out there who have survived and thrived.
A handful, here and there.
Maybe not now with COVID, but America does allow you to become the big corporate, monster gobbling up all the little guys. That's fortunate or unfortunate, depending on your view of America and American business. But I always look for the innovation, like what you've done with these concerts, Randy. There's always somebody who innovates and makes it happen and survives. And I look to those as my personal heroes more than I look to Guitar Center. You know what I mean? Because it's one thing to just have a bunch of money, buy real estate, sell gear cheap, and hey, we won. But it's another thing if you could be like, Andy Babuick's Fab Gear, or Chicago, Music Now, who sells all these, they have special guitars made just for their shop. I love people who innovate. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, there's an old saying that after a nuclear war, and let's add the word pandemic into it, all you're left with is cockroaches and tribute bands, right? And I'm very fortunate that Hot for Teacher is leading the tribute band charge, right? We're moving the tribute bands forward. We're still here and we're still rocking. So,
yeah, it's interesting to see that, because as you know, I'm in a tribute band too. You look around your constituency and your community, and it's like, well, who's going to come out after this? I was heartened by the amount of bands that you are able to pick from to work from. That they didn't go away, they didn't stop rehearsing, or and it's just great to see that the tribute community, looks like it's staying strong, and that's great.
There's so many musicians that just want to play. They just want a platform to play on, and I'm hoping I can provide that for them. I wish we had more platforms. I wish we could do it more often. Just like with the way the music industry works, so it's not, I'm not in control of that. It would be the consumer who's in control of that. We need enough people to show up to these shows to make them work.
Well, you're being safe. You're, like you said, you've got, world-leading safety in place. So if somebody does want to go to one of your concerts here or up in Elk Grove, it's like, I think it's a good thing that they can walk in and feel safe,
Yeah, or no, they drive in. And many people stay in their cars. I've got a few friends that I know and some other people that have sat in their cars the whole time because they're a little suspect or a little bit maybe immunocompromised, if you will, and they don't want to take any chances, and I don't want them to. And they can still get out and still enjoy a live show right in front of them, right there. The one advantage is during the day as we're setting up and the cars are coming in, you've got plenty of UV radiation here in California. That's killing everything right there. As the sun sets, that UV radiation dissipates, but then you've got these lovely strong evening breezes that blow a lot of the stuff away. So the likelihood and the chances of anything with any kind of large factor of virology getting you, a large dose like being in a closed room or a nightclub or something that's packed, is nil to none. So it's just trying to follow the science. And I'm not the end all to be all, and I have no idea on a lot of things. I know about some things, and I just try to go forward with those things,
Have you guys seen Moneyball, the movie Moneyball?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a quote from this movie that I really like, and I use it a lot. It says, the first man through the wall always gets bloody.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're kind of, wow, speaking of, something's happening back there. California. I don't know if you guys can hear the sirens.
Yeah, I heard the sirens.
Oh, yeah.
Just be glad they're not coming to your house, Matt.
Yeah, hey, they might be, but let's hurry up and get this interview done in case they show up now. But the first man through the wall gets bloody. The guy invented the whole way of statistically ranking players and drafting them based on their statistics and all that stuff, right? That guy didn't make the money. The people that copied him did, right? Yeah. So in your situation, you're kind of like spearheading it here. You're kind of taking one for the team. You're putting yourself out there at risk financially, legally with, who knows, like
not quite broken even yet either.
Yeah. Yes. So what do you think the next step is to actually make it profitable and scalable? Are you just trying to do this locally? Are you going to try to push it to like make it a template to replicate all over the country? Where are you going with it?
I haven't thought that far ahead as far as the country. We have thought far enough ahead. Again, Cal Expo was at the beginning of this idea, and 3 different times we had the rug pulled out from us. We found this lovely winery in Elk Grove that's going to work out. We've also been given the okay from Sonoma County Fairgrounds, so we're going to start doing something there. So we're looking at Northern California right now. I'm not sure about getting things further south or further east right yet. I do know that my shows are the only live music safe and socially distanced for hundreds of miles in every direction, unless somebody is doing, like Mike suggested or spoke about, playing out on the street corner, with their friends and have the band set up that way. And there's not too many of those going around. And then you don't have the security and the other mitigating things in place, perhaps, to keep that social distancing platform. So, we don't know where it's going to. I'll tell you what's going to happen. By the time mid-October rolls around, we're done for the season, right? Because the weather changes. You can't plan a show. And one of the things, our shows are planned like 1 to 2 weeks in advance. That's it. We're flying by the seat of our pants here.
Right.
And to get these things to sell out that quick, it's a lot. And we've been fortunate enough on some nights, and other nights we're taking hits and this and that. I don't know where it's going to go. I do know that I hope we open up in the spring, in the late spring, and start doing this again, because I don't see clubs at all next year. I don't see amphitheaters at all next year, no matter how bad people want it. It's not responsible.
And I think the nervous thing for me is, as you said, the tribute bands tend to have a better chance of pulling stuff in than original country bands or original bands, blah blah blah. So back to your earlier statement,
they want a lot more money too, even though they get this. The Nationals. When we're talking to a few of them, Sammy Hagar was brought up, but they're on hold right now, and he was interested, but we can only get 230 cars in at Sonoma, and the management wants a whole lot more, and we're just not in a position. We're not writing the health codes here. So,
well, I just mean it's going to be tough for original bands, to, once again, they're probably not going to be the first choice for drive-in concerts, because really it's going to be tribute bands or big stars that are going to bring in the numbers.
We're selling the dream with the tribute bands. That's the whole goal. You sell the dream. So the tribute bands that we're putting up there, there's some resemblance. There's some really good tribute bands in the Bay Area. There's that we just haven't brought in because the star or whoever it is doesn't have that kind of look. You know what I'm saying in terms of selling the dream thing?
Yeah.
That's a real big priority for us, given the constraints that we have with the small amount of time to sell it and the price. We have to charge $120 a car, which is $30 a person, but that's nominal if you think about what it costs from where I live to drive 30 miles to 25 miles to San Francisco. You got a bridge toll, you got to pay for parking, $12 beers, tip. You probably go out to dinner too. Now you spend $300-400.
I hadn't thought of that, but as you and I know, because we're in the tribute biz in the Bay Area, there are those bands. We're not saying anything about how good they are or bad they are, but they just think it's okay to show up in jeans and T-shirts and play the music, and it's going to be fine. But I think, where you're going to from the sell the dream thing, it's like those bands probably aren't going to flourish because they're going to want to see the acts that kind of at least emulate the vision somewhat.
I see a solution for that though. Like what you do, like I came from Roanoke, Virginia, for example, and there's a local music scene there. There's some very talented musicians, good bands. Probably won't be national acts or world acts, but they certainly great entertainment. Great
up and down the coast, right?
Yeah.
I've done Virginia Beach 3 times. I was hoping to do it this year coming up, but I'm not seeing that possibility happening.
But what you could do is you could get a bunch of acts to form a coalition in your city and go to the Chamber of Commerce or somebody in your city, the politicians, or depending on the size of your city, whatever, put together a presentation, do some research, find some places that you could possibly do it, and create your own ecosystem in your own city. And I think that's what Mike was talking about, how it used to be every city had its own scene, like that, and it like the musicians from Austin would come over to LA and they'd be like, oh man, I heard about this cat, he was great. And then, so it's like, maybe that's a way to bring that back. Like we lost that. Maybe it's a way to reboot the local music scene, like Mike has mentioned many times on the show.
Yeah, well, it's gonna take some more Randys out there. It's not gonna take the bands just whining, as you've alluded to many times, Matt. It's gonna take someone who's gonna put together the confab, so to speak. Hey, we're all the cool reggae bands, or the cool tribute bands, or the cool punk bands, or the cool country western bands, and someone's gonna have to go, I'm going to be the first through that wall and get blood. and we have the PA system, we have the venue, we have the safety measures, and some Randy's going to have to make that happen. Getting a whole bunch of Americana bands together and just having it happen by osmosis, yeah, I doubt that's ever going to happen in a trillion years.
Yeah.
Well, I think it just comes back to, we don't live in a time where you should be waiting around for somebody else to make up some crap for you to do. The times now are rebuild it, because we're rebuilding.
I'm sorry, Matt. I got to say, 3.5 months ago, after a 20-year run of doing this tribute band, I've had such a great time. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I was thought, maybe we're retired now. I don't know. And then Alex called and he had this wonderful idea, and he pushed and I started to push, and it just kind of came together. So I mentioned earlier, luck is just being ready when opportunity knocks, and being having a will to really push it forward. And that's all it is. I mean, I feel like if someone like me can do this, there's got to be 1,000 people that are way more in tune with bands and knowing this business better, and that where are they? Why aren't they doing it? And I'm not sure why.
It's when you talk about opportunity knocking, some people are like, all right, so luck is being prepared when opportunity knocks. Well, nobody's knocking. And so my answer to that is, you need to meet more people.
Yeah.
You need to meet more people. You need to go and try to do something. Because if you're waiting for somebody to call you, the chances of that happening is almost zero. So you've got to be the person, just like, it's kind of like running down a hill. You at some point, your legs are not going to be enough to keep you standing up.
No.
And you better learn how to fly really fast, because otherwise, yeah, exactly. So it's like
Fat Albert up there, my friends in the Blue Angels during Fleet. When I was hanging with them, I was in a Fleet Week. I was calling in to KCBS radio, and we get the afterburners on, 1,000-foot ascent, stop, unbuckle your belt, and you're floating around like you're in space.
Yeah. Dude, I worked on that aircraft. I actually, when I was in the Air Force, that plane broke, the Blue Angels. It broke on our base, and I was the only person there that could fix it. So I was like, oh, man.
Well, that one was retired. They've got a brand new one right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And
nice.
They actually wanted me to come down there to Miramar and open up their Friday night concerts. And I was supposed to do that in early July, but all of this COVID happened. So as soon as we can have real concerts, the Blue Angels, the crew from Blue Angels, they want us down at Miramar, and we'll be down there in Southern Cal. So maybe you can come out, Matt.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Absolutely would do that. I do want to. We are at the top of the hour, though. I want to really quick acknowledge Steve Walton. He's been sticking with us through the whole episode. He asked a couple questions. Did you respond? Yes. That was back in the Sammy Hagar doppelganger at NAMM thing. And no, I did not tell them I was Sammy Hagar. But
your hair needs to be a little more blonder, Matt.
No, it is. It's the lighting.
My buddy Jack Gibson, who's endorsed by Yamaha, I played with him in a number of bands. He's been in Exodus for God, it's got to be like 30 years now. He's been playing with Exodus. So
yeah,
I love the last name Gibson, like a guitar, but but he's a Yamaha guy.
Yeah, I got offered a endorsement from Gibson back when I was internet famous, and I decided to go with ESP because my
friend Pat Johnson was also somebody that did a lot of pushing for Gibson. I'm sure Mike knows Pat pretty well. You know, love Pat. Photographer of all the rock stars.
Oh yeah.
My ugly mug.
Well, Mike, why don't you give us some closing comments here, and we'll wrap this up. We're hitting our hour.
Well, I just want to thank, Randy. I know that, you're a teacher. School started. You're slammed. Thank you for taking the time to come here and talk about your other life as a musician and promoter. And thanks for giving us data on promotion. And also thanks for just being inspiring, because part of what we trying to do here with Kingdom of Rock is, we don't want people to just sit around and go, oh man, everything sucks. I mean, there are ways to make things happen. You'll have varying degrees of success, because not everybody can be Paul McCartney, oh. But if you don't start, you won't even be Johnny Rotten. You know what I mean? So
baby steps, one foot in front of the other. But you have to have the idea. And as far as what Matt was saying earlier, people aren't going to come calling. That's when you have to do your job. You know what I do? I walk out through my lanai on the back deck. I look up and I just go, help. This is what I need. And I promise it works. If you have already worked some ways of doing things, you will be surprised how often you end up within a week or so of getting an email, of getting a phone call, of getting something happening. And that really does work. You just have to let go. You have to let go. And sometimes it's okay to ask for help. Now, I'm not a godly guy, I'm not a religious guy at all, but it really does help. I'm more like atoms choose this hydrogen. Does it want to be bonded to this oxygen, or would it rather be bonded to a carbon? What's going on? What makes these atoms decide to bond? It's not random, ladies and gentlemen. It is purposeful.
I definitely think that we live in a universe that was, and this is just my opinion, that was created to support human beings. And I think in what you're talking about, I think is part of that creation.
Yeah. We are part of the rock next to your house. We're part of that tree and that bush and the grass. If you have grass or you have a cactus, we are all part of all of that. This whole thing. This is why we need to nurture it, because it is part of us. We should be nurturing ourselves.
And we're definitely, to speak to that, we're definitely connected to each other. And especially as artists and musicians, we share a common love. And thank you so much for being on the show, Randy. And thanks, Mike, for inviting Randy. And it's great Mike. To meet you, brother.
You too, Matt. I hope we stay in touch for a long time.
I'm sure we will. Maybe at a drive-in concert sometime soon.
Yeah. You get a wild hair and you want to drive up north side here, come see it. You could see the whole weekend of shows. You can be my guest.
I'm
get a hotel room, that's all.
Maybe me and Mike can road trip it. How close is that to you, Mike?
Sacramento's only about an hour and 20 minutes away from Mike.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to keep bugging the crap out of Randy for a tribute gig anyway. So. I
got ideas for the monkeys, okay? I got ideas.
Yeah, okay. Well, the monkeys are at your disposal.
Uh-huh.
All right,
guys.
Here now. Be safe.
Kingdom of Rock out, and we'll see you next week. Oh, say that again, Randy.
I said most mahalo y aloha.
Yeah. Take care, everybody. And bye, Steve Walton.
And every Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Kingdom of Rock is here on all the social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Actually, not Instagram, although we have a Kingdom of Rock podcast Instagram page. They won't let us live stream there yet, but we're going to start trying to figure that out here soon.
Yeah. And we're gonna grab somebody cool for next week. We don't have anybody yet, but the week after next, we've got Redbone, famous Native American band. We're having a documentary out about them, and that's going to be really interesting.
7 generations forward, please. Native American, I love it. Think 7 generations. How are we treating things now? So it's there 7 generations from now.
Well, we'll ask them that, Matt. Right?
That's a good question.
Yeah, we're gonna ask him that.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right, see you guys. Peace out.